here we are with the leech line along that edge. This again is the leech edge of the sail, obviously. And here we're going to leave a little loop at that end, about 3 to 4 inches long. And then now we're going to baste that opposite edge of the tape to the sail with the leech line sandwiched in between. There you saw her peel off the paper, revealing the glue and the double-sided tape. Now Deb places a knot in the leech line to keep it from pulling through easily while she's basting that tape in place. That's a good idea. And now she just bastes it all down its length. Be sure the leech line is up against that inner fold of that tape as you baste it down. We're coming down to the end of the tape, and that tape is flush with that pencil line we marked on the sail earlier. We want to put a 1/2 inch hem here, so we fold it just along this edge so we don't have a raw edge of tape, and then we just sew it with a sewing machine. Once that's done, we can continue basting on this tape. We'll position that cleat in the approximate position that it's going to be. Then we'll sew this tape down to the sail along its outer edge of the Dacron UV protected tape, remembering to reverse at the beginning and also at the end of our stitch. While sewing this tape down, make sure that you don't sew the leech line as you're sewing. Make sure the leech line's all the way against that folded edge. At the top here, this is the head of the sail, we want to create a loop in the leech line about 4 inches in length, and we definitely want to sew through that, but before we sew through that we want to just continue sewing down the length of this tape, and we'll sew that in the next step here. Okay, there we're tucking that leech line back into position again because it's worked its way out. We'll sew all the way up that outer edge of the tape. And then we'll come back and sew over that leech line again. Now Deb will ensure that that loop that she created, which is about 3 to 4 inches long, is sticking it somewhere close to the middle of the tape so that she can sew it under. You want to be sure to penetrate this loop several times with some zigzag stitches, or if you don't have a zigzag machine, with straight stitches. Just continue up that 4-inch loop and then back and then up and back a few times, ensuring that you sew it in nice and secure. We'll now turn our attention to the cleat. She'll mark the position for the cleat. You want to ensure that the cleat, especially this type of cleat, that the intersection of the V is facing the leech edge. So the sharp point of the V is facing the leech edge, and she uses a 1/8 inch hole cutter here to create the holes for the rivets. This is the back plate of this cleat. You may have a different cleat. After the rivets are installed in the back plate, push it through the holes that you created in your sail, and then install the top portion of the cleat, and then use a riveting punch to roll the rivet over on both those barrels. There's the V. The V is facing towards the outside of the leech of the sail, and then just punch it with a riveting tool. Okay, that's all there is for this cleat. Cleat styles vary. We'll do the same procedure for the foot. We're installing our UV protected tape along the foot the same way we installed it along the leech, and just sew the outer perimeter with a zigzag stitch. Okay, moving on. We're going to concentrate now on the luff edge and installing the continuous support tape. We'll take the continuous support tape and use a hot knife to seal the edge. This will be the edge at the top or the head of the sail, and we want to seal it all the way across there. Once that's done, we'll sandwich it between the sail. We will not use double-sided tape, and we'll match it up here to that line that we created earlier, which is about 3 inches from the head of this sail. And Deb is going to use a pick and drive it into the table. Now, obviously, if you're doing this at home, you may not want to drive a hole into your floor or table. So you may just have to staple it at the head there, and then just concentrate on sandwiching that continuous support tape all the way down its length. Remember the mark we placed on that Dacron tape here at the tack? She's marking the continuous support tape so that we can use a hot knife to cut this continuous support tape at that mark. So it just barely sandwiches that Dacron tape by approximately 1 inch. And we'll cut all the way through this with the hot knife. That will seal the edges of this continuous support tape nicely. Okay, and then she ensures that it's sandwiched in between the sail. Then she will use a pick here at the other end, and she'll make sure it's nice and taut and also nice and straight down that luff edge of the sail. By tacking this continuous support tape on the luff of the sail as she is here by using picks, it's much easier to staple it in place and not have it move. We'll use a standard stapler here and just place a staple about every 3 to 4 inches. And as you can see in the video, a standard stapler works well with the continuous support tape. As you're stapling, be sure that edge is all the way against that inner continuous support tape line, that bead. And here we are, almost done. Now we'll pull out those picks and take it to our sewing machine and sew a zigzag right along that inner bead. Start your stitch with some reversing to lock the stitch in place, and then continuing to sew down the entire length along this luff edge. This is an easy job to do. Just keep your finger here along the one edge, keeping that foot right along that bead. Alright, now it's sewing down. Now Deb's going to install a Insignia green tape here at the top just to protect that edge from any chafe. This is not a necessity, but it's a good idea. So she applies this Insignia green tape to the edge and then sews it down in place. And this will help protect that edge as you're inserting it in your furling system. Then don't forget to pull out the staples. Use a screwdriver to pull them out, then needle nose to pull them all the way out. And then sew the outer edge with a zigzag stitch. So 2 rows of stitches are holding this continuous support tape to your luff. We'll now turn our attention to the webbing that will be used for the attachment points at the head and also at the tack. As you can see, we're installing double-sided tape along both inner edges of this webbing, and we'll sandwich the sail between this webbing. Notice we're not installing double-sided tape to the center of this webbing because that's where the loop will be used to attach your halyard. We are now sandwiching the sail between the webbing, and that double-sided tape will help hold it in place as we take it over to the sewing machine and sew. There are various styles of fastening methods here. We're just using webbing. You may also be using webbing in a round stainless steel ring, or there just may be a grommet here. So this is just one example of the many different options that are available. Here she's doing it with a straight stitch machine. This is a Serrite 111, and she reverses at the beginning and the end of the stitch, and she'll put about 3 rows of stitches in this length of webbing, being sure not to sew that loop at the top closed. We'll now push that loop to the side and use a hot knife just to seal the head of this sail here. You can do this obviously before you put the webbing on if you like. Now we'll move over to the actual tack, and we'll do the same procedure with the loop of webbing there as well. There are a variety of other fastening methods used in the corner of sails. You can use webbing in a 1-inch stainless steel ring, or webbing in a D-ring, or even a pressed grommet. I just wanted to show you some of the noise you've been hearing throughout this video. You can see in the background here we're working on stainless steel tubing, cutting and bending it to fill particular orders. And here we are sewing the last of the webbing on. We haven't shown you exactly what we're going to do with the clue, but again we'll just use a grommet or a webbing in a D-ring at the clue, which we are not going to show. You are done.